My name is Lydia, and I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in September of 2015, stage 3C, and I was 54 years old at the time. I had to have an aggressive chemotherapy treatment. I went for 12 chemo treatments. I was just recently diagnosed with a recurrence, and I'm currently on a clinical trial using a PARP inhibitor. I had always been, say, in control of my health, of course, and because I was very diligent about going for my checkups. And then all of a sudden they tell you that you have ovarian cancer, and they're telling you that you have to go for treatment. And I think to myself, I can't control any of that. I want to be able to, but I can't. I was very, very hard on myself. That's just because of the way I am. And for me, it was like, what could I have done differently to prevent this? You know, I must have missed it. I should have. And I think those thoughts just automatically sometimes go through a woman's head. And you think, and then my doctor said to me, and it was so reassuring, and she took my hand and she said, Lydia, there's no way you could have found this. Don't be so hard on yourself. And that changed everything, because she gave me sort of permission to not be so hard on myself. So that's one thing that I've learned through this journey, that, you know what, give yourself some permission to don't blame yourself. It's not your fault that it happened to you. It just happened. When I was first diagnosed, it was challenging to tell everybody. What I found is depends on who you tell. You know, people that don't know about, I guess some people that know about ovarian cancer, I found a lot of the reactions were, oh, you have that one. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. And you don't know what to say to that, because they're like, oh, the silent one. And it's like, oh, like, and you have to sort of take it in and think, oh, so you know, are they writing me off? Do they think that? And all these things go through your mind, and you're like, wow, So what I chose to do after, you know, telling a few friends and family, I said, you know what? I was telling them, I'm good, I'm okay, and I'm going to go through treatment, and everything's going to be good. And that gave them more, because it's really hard for people to know what to say. That's what I've learned. And I had a girlfriend that started crying, and I said, don't cry, it's okay, I'm good. And so that's a really, really tough one to manage, because it's so difficult, because everybody's different in how they process the news and that type of thing. So I tried to make them feel better, and I tried to not make them feel terrible that, you know, I was diagnosed, and I was good with it. And that's how we handled it. I know that when you get the diagnosis, your first inkling is to search the internet. That can be good or bad. So I think for example, if I went on the Ovarian Cancer Canada website, for me, that I know that the information on that website is legitimate and it's very helpful. And they will send you a monthly bulletin, as well as they will invite you to, if there's education sessions or things like that. So that has always really been helpful to me. That was one of the things they hosted, was a forum. And it brought in many different medical doctors and oncologists, and they talked about ovarian cancer today, and, you know, the research that they're doing on it, where they are, and different trials, which was really, really informative to me. And that's how I got interested in the Ovarian Cancer Walk of Hope. And that is held every September, and I've done it now for 2 years in a row. And also I got to meet other survivors, you know, and they give you inspiration and they give you hope. And, you know, and some were, you know, have lived with the disease for 17 years and they've had multiple recurrences. So you know that you're not alone, and you know that they've been through it, and they're still standing. And so for me, it just gives you, you know, more inspiration, and it gives you that hope that, you know what, it's a disease that you can control to a certain extent in some cases. So just live and be grateful and live each day to the fullest. And, and one woman, she talked about, she had originally been given 2 to 3 years, and she's there 17 years later, and she's had, multiple grandchildren. And that for me is so important to hear that type of a story. I was recently told that I have a recurrence. That one at the very beginning was a little bit challenging because I thought that I was doing everything right again, and that how could I get a recurrence? And you're a little bit shocked because you think everything was going so well, your blood work was all good, and then all of a sudden it's there in front of you. And you hope, every woman hopes that they never get a recurrence. And you hope that you could go a number of years without getting a recurrence if you do get one. So when they told me that, it took me maybe a couple of weeks to really absorb it and really take it in and really accept it. And then once I accepted it, I felt I had this inner strength. And I said to myself, well, it's there, so what are you going to do about it? And I decided that I'm going to face it, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to just do what they tell me, because I know they know their stuff, and I believe in what they tell me. So I will just deal with the recurrence, do my treatment regimen, and continue to live on and live each day just to the fullest like I was living it before. My reoccurrence, I decided to get some information on clinical trials. I wanted to make sure that I looked at everything out there that's available. I would have never thought about a clinical trial 2 years ago. I just thought, oh, clinical trials. Of course, I've learned a lot since then. So what I thought, that was really difficult deciding about that too, because, well, do I go on regular chemo treatment again, or do I try a clinical trial? And I had a hard time trying to figure it all out. But in the end, with my medical team, I came to the conclusion that the clinical trial is where I wanted to go. So before I knew enough about a clinical trial, I always thought, oh, they give those clinical trials to women that, might not have hope. But what I've learned, that's not the case. There are so many different clinical trials out there, and you don't have to, my particular one was for if you've had a recurrence. I was always thinking that the clinical trials were like if you've had multiple recurrences, or this isn't working for you. So that's an education thing that I've learned. And I certainly would recommend that if the option is there, just learn about it. You don't have to go on a clinical trial, but just know what's out there. So for me, I really thought about that. And I thought, well, you know what? There's no reason why I shouldn't try the clinical trial. Because the other thing is what if it helps another woman down the road so she doesn't have to go through chemo treatment? And that might be the standard treatment down the road, because there has been some really good success with these pills, with these drugs. So for me to make a difference for someone else that, so they don't have to go through, what many of us are going through, that's really important to me. Living with ovarian cancer has changed my life in so many ways. We did so much planning before my diagnosis. We would plan the trips and the vacations, and we would book the tickets for the concerts. So now it's not always so rushed. It's more like I try not to go too much in the future, only because it's okay. I expect to be here in the future, but I try not to, one thing I've done is not jam my schedule so packed because it's not worth it. Now I just sort of go at it at a different pace. It's not this jam-packed schedule anymore because it's not me anymore. For me, I'm just happy just to really spend time with my family and my friends. And, you know, my parents are still here and I want to spend time with them too, because that's what's important to me. I've really learned what's important to me. And it doesn't matter. You don't always, you know, have to have a full schedule to be fulfilled. You just don't.